Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show, well, at least ours anyway, where we talk about the issues that affect the customer experience at your store. And I'm very fortunate to have a great network of colleagues and friends that come on every week and share with us what they do or what they've done to improve the customer experience. And this week being no different, I have my esteemed colleagues, Robert Sebestyen, Mike Vogel, and Joe Clementi. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks,
Great
Paul.
to be here. Thank you, Paul.
So this week we're going to talk about what we feel is the kind of the perfect drive layout, shop layout, or dealership layout. And if we don't run out of time, we'll get into some BDC as well. So before we get started, for those that might not know you three gentlemen, starting with Robert, then Mike, and then Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll kick it off.
Hey, guys. I'm Robert Sebestyen. I'm with gravitationalbusiness.com, where we're passionate about bringing training that changes the mindset of the service advisor to care completely for each customer every time. I've been in automotive since about 1994, and then I own a family business where we also serve customers every day. So it's all about really taking awesome care of the customer and our teams that make magic happen for those customers. So that's about what I do.
Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Vogel, and I've spent 40 plus years in the automotive business with 30 years in fixed ops leadership, 30 plus years. I am semi-retired now, doing fixed ops consulting for both dealers and also some fixed ops vendors in the marketplace, and always excited to share my experiences with anybody that's willing to listen.
Welcome.
All right. Thanks, Paul. My name is Coach Joe. I'm an organizational and leadership performance coach. My formal role is Executive Vice President at Traver Connect, where we help organizations build and streamline their BDC, business development departments. So I'm excited to be on really all things fixed operations. That's what we're driven around. And that's our mindset, right? 30 or 40, almost 40 years in the automotive world. So thank you.
I think between the four of us, we have more years than the auto business has been in business. That's what happens when you put a bunch of old car guys together, right?
Yep.
I don't know anything about old.
So starting off with the layout. My vision is a dealership that is focused not just on sales with service being an afterthought, but an equal partner. And I created using AI a rendering of what I think would be an ideal service department or dealership, which focuses on service as much as it does on sales. Now, there was a guy that I met years ago, who used to be an executive with Toyota, who felt that the service department should be in front of the building and the sales department should be in the back. And while I have a sweet spot in my heart for fixed operations, I feel that both departments should be equally highlighted. So let me just show here on the screen what I came up with. It could be a version of this. It could be the service bays all the way on the right half of the building and the sales department all the way on the left half of the building. Really depends on personal choice. But I think when you have a setup like this, they know that you're not just there to sell cars, but you're also in the service business. And with fixed operations, we've always carried the cost of the dealership, right? For the last 4 years, sales departments have been kind of fat and happy, largely due to the pandemic and supply chain issues and inventory issues. But the way it was before the pandemic is kind of the direction where we're headed now, because right now, most dealerships that I speak with have greater levels of inventory than they've had in several years. And that, of course, drives down the pricing, and it makes service or fixed operations important again, because it always carries the dealership's costs. So let's kick it around. Robert, what do you think is an ideal dealership setup?
Man, I kind of like that thing about the parts and service department being right up front and center. It would solve one major problem that we have in the car business, and that's the service introduction, because customers would have to walk through service to get to sales. So you would instantly be greeted by someone, and ideally you would have a greeter who would greet every customer. Of course, the salespeople are out on the lot, but the salespeople even taking the customer into the dealership to their desk to start talking numbers or start talking about options and stuff, they would have to walk through service. So the service walk would be top of mind, because it would be right up front. So it wouldn't be one of those things that, why didn't you introduce them to service? Of course, on the survey, the question, were you introduced to service? Of course, 70% no. And the other thing is, if dealers would wrap their mind around this number, 70% of customers who service with you will consider you first when they buy a car. That's a Cox Automotive survey a couple of years back. And I think that's consistent. And it's a no-brainer, really. If you love the service, you're going to buy a car at that dealership, which is why sometimes people wonder. I saw a group of advisors who were talking, why do we run all these specials to all these customers and buy nothing but oil changes? If you think about it, you get the customer in for oil changes that don't make you a lot of money, but the customer will buy a car from you, and they really didn't do anything else but oil changes. You still win. The dealership wins. And in the end, you win a PDI, you win a used car inspection. So you're still winning, but it's so short-sighted to think that if the customer doesn't buy any more than that oil change, don't worry about it. However, I really love the idea, because the customer would have to be walked through. So let's say if I'm the salesperson, I'm greeting the customer on the lot, I'm going to invite them in. Let's say it's really hot, right? Really hot outside. I said, come on in, let's get you a bottle of water. I'm going to do a quick I'll ask you a few questions so you don't have to walk around in the heat, and I'll show you options based on what you tell me. And you do the customer interview as a salesperson and say, okay, what do you not like about your vehicle? Now, you know the drill. If you've been in sales, automotive sales, you find out what did they love about what they have, what did they need to improve, go from a sports car to a family car because they have twins, whatever the case might be. But you don't walk them around in the 110-degree heat or the 30-degree cold or 20-degree cold. You get them through. Again, you're walking through the service department, and a smart salesperson would immediately say, and by the way, this is our awesome service team who you can count on to keep your vehicle in top shape. They've been winning all the awards that you can think of for the manufacturer. Customers love our service. So you immediately get that connection going. And it gives the customer something to think about, to start thinking of your dealership as an awesome place where people actually get along. Hey, and they would get along better because the salespeople have to walk again through the service area to get to the front. That's how I would set it up. Not necessarily through it, but maybe have a hallway that is kind of adjacent so that you're not bumping heads or whatever, but that you could see each other and have to have fellowship and have to have some communication between the different people in the department. So the layout, I think, would do things that people would not imagine. So it's not only about the look of it, and it's not only about the customer coming up and saying, wow, these people are really into service, but it would work some magic in many other ways.
I like it.
So, oh, by the way, layout. One thing, if you're in really cold, really hot climate, however you do the layout, it would be really awesome to grow up and have facilities where your customers and your staff don't have to be out in the elements. You know, when they come in, obviously modern dealerships have service drives where you can pull in and be out of that crazy wind in the winter or be out of the rain. And the service advisors would stay with you longer if they don't have to freeze every time they go greet a customer.
Mike, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm going to go into a different topic in just a second, but I'd say in addition to what Robert has brought up, some very great valid points, is the pickup and delivery service and the mobile service that a lot of dealers are having a great deal of success on. And I think, the self-promotion of that has to be important. So maybe there needs to be a display area close to the service entrance where the trucks are parked and signs are out there letting people that maybe are just driving by the dealership that, hey, we have mobile service available. Hey, we have pickup and delivery available. And to piggyback onto what Robert said about, the people equation, there's no question. When I teach service advisors, the one thing I want to tell them is when we lose a customer, everybody loses. Your technicians lose hours, your parts department loses sales, service loses sales, and the sales department may lose their next car sale. So, and I think you could say the same holds true for the sales department. When they sell a car, but they don't, it's not a smooth process. What's the incentive for that customer to come back and try the service department? They may, and they may not if they don't have a great experience. So where I want to go with this, and this is not related to facilities, but I think we spend a lot of time designing facilities. OEMs spend God knows how much money and time building these Taj Mahals that these dealerships are putting up. But the reality is, we're not focusing enough on our employees first. And then obviously the customers go hand in hand with the employees. If we're not focused on the employee retention and satisfaction aspect leading to customer satisfaction and customer retention, what does it matter how the facility is laid out? If they're not coming, they're not coming. If your employees are not happy, they're not going to retain enough customers. And if the customer doesn't get a great level of service, regardless of the facility, and I've worked and seen many dealerships that were total dumps for a long time that were very successful. On the flip side, I've seen some beautiful dealerships that didn't have enough business to support it. So again, I know it's not related to layout, but I just wanted to add my 2 cents to this discussion and say, let's make sure that we're focusing on the employee experience and the employee satisfaction first before we truly dive into how we're going to design the facility.
I agree with you 100% because I've seen scenarios where there was a remodel coming and everybody put all their chips in the remodel basket that, once we get the new facility, everything's going to be great. And then when you look at the metrics and you look at the CSI numbers and you look at what customers think about that new facility, and it takes a nosedive, right? It's really a combined effort. It's cultivating a team that cares, so everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. And then we could talk about how should the facility be laid out. Let me get to a couple of comments here before we go too much deeper. Craig Tomasic says, good evening, folks, and Linda Hansen, a subject dear to my heart. No excuse not to introduce service and parts. If you ask most stores, they'll tell you that their sales to service handoff is lacking. True story. Pete Perez says, taking it a step further, team up advisors with dedicated sales consultants that can handle all the needs from start to finish. Great service is key. Jamie Alexander, good evening all. So true, Mike. They have to work in tandem. And
can I jump in on Pete's comment there real quick?
Absolutely.
So that was something I did back in 2000. I was at a Toyota store and we did exactly what Pete's talking about there. We paired up sales teams with service teams or service advisors. And the other thing we did was we made a hallway loaded with all the pictures of the technicians and the advisors with their business cards for the hours that we weren't available to do a meet and greet with the customers at the time of delivery. And so they can kind of put a face to the name and also see the qualifications of all the technicians and it really made a huge difference in building the loyalty of the clientele to us, because now it felt like family, really.
I had that conversation in store last Thursday. How funny is that?
It works, no question. Pete's exactly right.
Now, the only caveat I throw in there is that turnover does happen, and by pairing the salesperson and the advisor to a customer, let's say, if I like the team concept myself.
That's what we did.
Wrong answer.
Yeah.
2 advisors.
So that way, if one leaves, you're not, oh, wow, my guy or my gal left. Now I have to start all over again and build a new relationship.
Right.
Joe.
All right. So I'm going to approach this a little differently. Sales is the sizzle. It's sexy, right? This is what OEs care about. How out front, how promotional they are with selling their brands and products. However, the key in all of this is, how aligned are your people with the values of the organization? And then ultimately, are you really listening to what the customer wants? Service is now getting sexy. We have remote service, right? We have pickup and delivery now. We have an assigned, dedicated business development department to make the process less frictionless for your customers to make appointments. So when you think about all the things that are centered around the operations, the service side, to connect the customer experience, when we think about this layout, I just see it as it has to be one team, one centric approach to how you're going to serve the customer. If you begin with the end in mind, you understand the processes and I really identify how the customer experience is intended to be from the customer's lens. You can deliver out of the crappiest facility or the most pristine facility. But you have to understand that this is an evolving climate. The world has changed. How we do business has changed. We have elaborate service facilities where your waiting room is just amazing. And out of the 4 of us, how many of you would like to sit in a waiting room and wait for your car to be serviced? Okay, so none of us, right? You'd rather be either at your office, you'd rather be at your home, or you'd rather be in a place that is more convenient. And the studies have also proved, what's that?
It's funny that you brought that up, because I did get my wife's car service recently, and we did wait in the customer lounge. And what did they have on? They had news on the TV.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm getting off track here, but that's the last thing.
Please no news. Please no news on the TV.
Is the news.
Yeah. I mean, I sat in a waiting room to have my Subaru serviced, right? A small, probably 10 by 10 room. The parts manager on the phone all day, talking louder than the TV, and sitting in pleather seats, right? Where would I rather be? Would I rather be at home watching Saturday football, or would I rather be sitting in that waiting room, right? And so the demands of the customers have changed. If we can change how we approach this, how we're going to service them, sales and service collectively work together. We don't even think about business development in terms of, I think even Robert said this, there's a lot of opportunity for trade appraisals. There's a lot of opportunity for used vehicles that get sold and never come back to your facility. What if you could pinpoint where those vehicles are being sold and how to properly address those vehicles and bring them back? When we think about retention, that's a buzzword the manufacturer uses. What counts? It's loyalty. It's how loyal is Robert to my facility and to our people. How loyal can we create an environment where they want to come back to that beautiful facility? Let's not change the mindset that sometimes people think that gorgeous facility you just built, it's intimidating as well.
Right.
Right?
What
So
I'm hearing is that of the layout, it seems like half of the layout is not about the layout at all. It's the layout of the mindset of the people, how they relate to the customers. That's a more important layout.
You know, we have talked now for several months, and my common theme along every meeting we've all had is culture, culture, culture. You set up the right culture, amazing things happen when you empower your team members to serve your customers.
Everybody pulling the rope in the same direction. Freddie says, I thought people like sitting in the waiting room watching Channel 6 News. I'd rather be in a restaurant myself, but that's just me. So
I think we're all in agreement here that you could deliver exceptional service. I'm going to say something really crazy now, just because I believe this. You could deliver exceptional service, writing paper ROs, and getting your customers in and out with clear expectations, with clearly explained, with transparent servicing, pricing, and always communicating 100% what will happen, by when will it happen, how much will it cost, and then following through on promises. So that's absolutely true. At the same time, while we're thinking about dreaming a little bit here, this is kind of a futuristic thing we're doing, right? That if I had a choice, and I had a personal experience last year when we went to Arizona and had a recall. No, we changed the oil. They told me about the recall as I was leaving, which was really poor service, right? They should have looked up the recall when I arrived. They should have said, your vehicle has 2 recalls. We could do this today, but we're extremely busy. It'll take all day. Would you like a ride back home, or would you like to reschedule? Whatever the case might be. However, the worst thing there was pretty nice facility, but not the way I would want it. No coffee, and I'm an addict. There was no coffee. There was a donut area. It was early in the morning. In fact, I made a decision at home. I told my son who was with me, I said, you know what? I'm not going to have any coffee. I'll just have some coffee, whatever. This is a nice dealership. They probably will have some good coffee. Even when I brought it to the GM's attention, they said, service takes care of that. They never did. But hey, if I had a choice and look at the coffee shops that are very popular and where people love to hang out, then the waiting area would look like that. Like it literally would have to look like a nice coffee shop that's inviting, where people go in with their laptops and they gladly spend 45 minutes. And if you were going to go in for an oil change, the good dealerships, and we know some that have the service down to, in one case, 27 minutes with 2-person teams, including the car wash. It's not a full detail for sure. However, clearly it's about the experience. I mean, so when we were talking about this, and of course, Paul, I know you're going to, I'm not trying to take over here. Look at the perfect dealership from the standpoint of each employee. What would constitute the perfect place of employment? What's lacking, right? And in many cases, what's really lacking is a leader who understands how to care for their people with the tools that their current dealership provides them. Or sometimes what's lacking is an owner who has a really caring philosophy, in which case, as a manager, I would run for the hills quickly. I might stay long enough to maybe pay a couple of mortgage payments, but I'd have to find a new place, because if the owner doesn't have a philosophy of caring for both the employees and the customers, and so let's milk them, they're cows, right? Let's just milk everybody for everything they've got. That's not going to work, no matter how beautiful the facility is. And then obviously we're looking at the scenario of, we spent all this money on this nice facility. How come everybody's not happy?
So,
it comes down to creating that culture, though. I mean, if, to your point, if your team members aren't aligned with the expectations on delivering a great customer experience, whatever that experience is, or however that experience is defined, otherwise you're just chasing a financial statement result, and the competition for that customer's attention is waning, and we're not reaching and connecting with those customers to bring them back to create loyalty. You said 70% of customers, when they service with you, will buy from you. If that doesn't tell a story, then why? I think it's 30 or 40. Maybe someone has the statistics off the top of their head, but 30 to 40% of our customer base leave us after 2 years. They leave your
Actually higher
service.
than that, 70%.
I mean, okay, so that's even scarier, right? So what are we? The facility is not the answer. Service can be sexy. You can sell the elements of all the reasons why, because when you buy that beautiful brand new vehicle, now you have to care for it, right? Now the story and showing that beautiful vehicle to your friends and neighbors is one thing, but the true joy of ownership comes in that experience, that service experience.
So
That's what you tell friends about.
when in the early 2000s, Toyota signed up our dealership to be a pilot dealer for a program called Toyota Signature. Unfortunately, it only stuck around about, I want to say, 8 years. However, I continued using the concept for the rest of my career until I retired. And it revolves around all the touch points of a customer during their visit, from the beginning to the end, from the appointment setting all the way to the active delivery. And what it was is we pulled in people from every department. So we would pull in a technician, a service advisor, a salesperson, a business office person. Anyway, we'd get an uneven number of people. It could be 5 people, it could be 7 people, because we wanted a deciding number on voting. And we asked them, what's the most important? What are the customers looking for? What are you looking for in a business if you're going to come in here? And how does it relate to our service department? And they came up with the processes, and then their job was to present it to myself, the parts manager, and the general manager. And we sat down and figured out, okay, how does this fit into our business model? And you do that from A to Z. And it really, really works well, because as leaders, sometimes we rush to make judgments and we rush to make all the decisions. And the reality is we shouldn't be doing that. Even though we have lots of experience, we need to we need to make sure that we're serving the customer in the best way possible, in the way that they want to be served.
Right. We don't, while we're subject
process. Guess
Sorry,
what?
Mike.
When you have your employees involved in the decision-making process, they'll stick to the processes a lot better because they're the ones that designed it.
Yeah. And while we're subject matter experts, we don't know your individual facility and how your customers want to be serviced in your market. What we're all saying is listen to the customer, design your facility and your processes to Freddie's point, right? It could be a great facility and a crappy process, or the opposite way, a great process and a crappy facility. Just listen to what your customers are telling you that they expect. And Robert's point earlier was, hey, if it's super hot like it is here in California or maybe Texas, or if it's super cold like it is in the Midwest or in the Northeast, create an environment where it's friendly for the customer and your team member. And when you make it easier for both, then they have a chance to actually connect and deliver that relationship.
Now, to both Robert's point and Freddie's point about clear communication, right? Customers want to feel respected. They want to be guided through the process by an automotive professional that understands them and takes the time to communicate clearly. I advocate for a couple of things. One is setting expectations, right? We waste an inordinate amount of time on incoming status calls, right? As it comes to process. So what I like is, let's greet the customer in the drive. We're all in agreement on that. That's their safe spot. And while there, before going through the walk around that involves them, let them know exactly what's going on. Now, since we all learn differently, some people learn by seeing, some people learn by hearing, some people learn by doing. So what I like to do is I like to create a rack card. A rack card is a card that's smaller than a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Okay. And when I greet that customer in the drive, I can show them exactly what they can expect from today's visit. I can show them that here's the first step. I greeted you in the drive. The first status update will contact you by text by 10 o'clock at the latest. The vehicle in the shop, we're going to notify you by text. We're going to send you the multi-point inspection. The advisor is going to call you to go over the findings. Everything that's going to transpire within that visit is on this rack card, and you share it with them and you hand it to them. Okay, this could be a piece of paper that's not 8.5, and that's not white, some pastel color that's different that you hand to them. So on one side, it lays out the entire visit so they know what to expect. Hey, I know you're busy at work, so you don't need to stress out about calling us. The first contact's going to be by 10 a.m. Then, you spell out what you feel the follow-up cadence is. So you cut down on the stress from the customer having to worry about calling in. You cut down on the stress about having to spend time on the phone with the customer. And everything is laid out right down to the follow-up. As part of what we do, we contact our customers after service, generally within 24 hours. What is the best time and number to call you tomorrow when I call to follow up on service, right? Everything is laid out so the customer knows what's going on. Another problem that customers typically have is they don't like to come to the dealership because they feel every time they go in, we try to sell them everything. It's not necessarily that we try to sell them everything. It's that we don't sell the green enough. So when they do come in, and it's the first time that we're actually showing them a bunch of things they need, it feels like they're being sold a bunch of goods. And the other thing is that for some reason, the aftermarket has convinced the world, not capping on the aftermarket, Jamie, but all these companies have convinced customers that all they need is an oil change, right? So one of the big problems that dealerships have is one-line ROs. I'm not trying to upsell them anything. So on the other side of this rack card as to what they can expect, I like mileage-specific recommendations from the OEM, okay? So when a customer comes in, they're coming in for their oil change, they're expecting that $70 or $80 oil change. Hey, welcome. We've been expecting you. You've come in for your oil change. Great. How many miles do you have on your car, Mrs. Jones? And you write that mileage right on the card. Then you circle the mileage they give you. You circle the OEM recommends at 30,000 miles, the following items. Average cars on the road, 12.6 years today. So we care about the ownership experience. When you hand them that card, and the first thing somebody's going to do is they're going to look at what you handed them. Now they're going to say, oh, it looks like I might need more than an oil change. And you walk them through the process. If the OEM recommends an air filter, tell them, show them a dirty one, hold it up to the light, show them a clean one, and explain to them how much your fuel economy is impacted, what it means to your pocket. Every week you go to the gas station to buy gas. If I can tell you less money is going to come out of this if you change the air filter, it's something they can relate to. Take the cabin filter, another item. Most dealerships charge $100, $120, right? For something you could pick up on Amazon for $20. But explain to them, hey, the reason the OEM recommends it. You ever watch TV? Mike, you watch TV sometimes?
Never.
Never. Joe, you?
I do.
Robert?
Not much anymore, but a little bit, yes.
You ever see any allergy commercials when you're watching TV?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
tons of drug commercials. Yeah.
Right. They spend billions of dollars on allergy commercials. Why? Because people develop allergies. Here, Mrs. Jones, let me show you this. Your car has 30,000 miles on it. Here's a filter that has a cabin filter that has 30,000 miles. Here's a brand new one. This is what you're breathing. They're more likely to understand that. So to Robert's point and to Freddie's point about clear communication, create something like this for your stores, mileage specific. You have less one-line ROs, but more importantly, you'll have happier customers.
I got to challenge that, and I'll challenge it with this perspective. The more complicated you make this process for your customer, the less engaged they are going to be. A thorough digital multi-point inspection with multiple touch points and expectation as a result of those digital multi-point inspections, creating fact-based presentations is what's going to connect your customer. I can tell you, if you handed me that sheet, I'm not reading it. What's going to tell me the story is how well, but I'm not going to read it. I guarantee you. What I want to see is how you're delivering on what you promised. Are you receiving me well? Are you creating a frictionless experience for me? Are you presenting me with fact-based data based on your technician's inspection? And do I have options? Can I decide from those options what is best for me? And then ultimately, when we go all the way back to the beginning, to the customer frictionless appointment, are we setting the stage for me to get an oil change? And then I've got to wait another hour and a half for you to do all the things you recommended? Or are we presetting that stage and say, while you're there, there are options to achieve X, Y, and Z. Would you like to go ahead and set that up now? Because now when we get to that experience, that customer's going, I know what to expect. I know my time frame. I know how long it'll take to get from A to Z because of that. And now it's less friction in the process of going, well, Mike, you told me you were going to do this. Now this is great. I can do it. Can you do it now? And Mike says, well, no, I can't do it now. It's going to take another 2 hours. What am I going to do?
But this lays out specifically what's going to happen and how and when, and whether you do it with your BDC when they set the appointment or you do it when they come in. It sets everything up for them and explains it in such a way that they can understand it. So when they do get the MPI, it's clearer to understand. It sets more realistic time expectations.
That sounds like an internal process issue, just my perception, right? Than a customer procedural process. And
so Joe,
if you're finally, go ahead, Robert, I'm sorry, but if you're finally tuned in the process, you don't need a sheet of paper to direct me. You need a process to say, here's how we're going to do it. And everyone mission-centric on delivering that customer experience.
That's the process. If the customer does not know what to expect, we're in the store 26 days a month. They're in the store 2 times a year. So setting the right expectations helps them to better understand.
We're going to tag team on this. Joe, so you are certainly in the 25% to maybe 30% of customers who would just throw that piece of paper straight out in the trash. That's what it sounds like. However, here's where I found when you hand somebody something like that, to back up what you already told them, let's say in an ideal world, in the perfect dealership that we're working on, every time you contact the dealership, which is why I really like more BDC than online customer setting up their own appointment, because they're going to set it up for the wrong thing half the time. So if you're talking to a real person that's going to look up history right away, and they'll say, Mr. Customer, your vehicle is due for a 30,000 mile service, whatever. That's the more typical it's a bigger one maybe, or 60,000. That's going to take about 3 hours, and we can email you real quick. I'll email you what that includes. Here's the cost, whatever. We can arrange for a loaner. However, when you back it up with the written thing, like I said, I've seen this in life because I've always believed to hand people something they can hold in addition to just telling them about it. So the other, maybe half the customers love it. In fact, 25% of them are the exact opposite. 25% of customers will go when you give them something in writing and a detailed explanation. They say, wow, I've never received anything like that. People always just want to buy air. Like, I don't see the service. They don't see what they're buying. So I get it. And yes, just don't worry about the few people that will throw it out, which is probably about 25, 30%. But then if that person comes back later and said, well, what did you do to my car? You charged me all this money, because they always tune out from what you're trying to tell them. You have that customer that, despite your best efforts, you explain everything, you give it to them in writing, you email it to them, they come back and say, well, I don't know what you did. I paid $650, but no. So
that's a process breakdown, though. That's
here's
not
another
a card. That's
That
a
means you didn't do
process
an
breakdown.
that means you
That's
didn't do an
that's
exit
not a
delivery.
card saying I'm going to do
Just
A,
started
B, C,
call.
and D. You failed in the process. If your card is perfect and you failed to deliver value, then it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what that card.
we agree on that.
Yeah.
We definitely agree on that. I would add a QR code with a quick video with explainer videos that explains the same thing that's on the card.
No,
Because again, we are different type learners. Customers are different type learners. I see what you're saying there, but
I love
some
that.
people
I love it.
some people love to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and explainer videos work. I mean,
Pete Perez nailed it in his comment. You need to be the trusted advisor. Okay, if you're the trusted advisor, you would have had that conversation about this service on their previous visit. When they were leaving, you were pre-scheduling the appointment. You were discussing it so they compare financially and time-wise, and not find out when they arrive at the dealership. At that point, they may not have the budget for it, and they may not have the time for it. So why not talk about it on the previous visit?
You discuss what's happening at every visit. You think in paragraphs. You write in bullet points. It's clear communication. Some people learn by seeing. Some people learn by reading. Some people learn by hearing. And this covers all the bases.
We can agree to disagree. I'm
We
on
can.
Joe's side.
That's the best part, right? We're all valuing an opinion so that the dealer can make the decision that's best for their environment, right? And there should be opposing views on things so dealers can decide what's best for them.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Most dealers, I'd say, unscientifically, 90 to 95% of them do not hand their customers a bullet pointed what they can expect. And that's been forever. And where are we today in what customers perceive about dealerships and communication? If you study online reviews, what you'll see time and time again, the similar trends happen, and communication ends up being a huge part of what customers are unhappy about. So
100%.
Pride.
You're
Pride,
right.
Something different.
You're right. But here's the caveat to that. They are not dissatisfied because you didn't follow through on the process. They're dissatisfied that communication failure happens when you say you are going to do something and you don't because Correct. Of a breakdown. Or if my expectations are that you'll call me with an update on the status of my vehicle and you're not proactive enough, your service advisor is so busy where they can't handle that, that's where communication fails. So it's not, I guess what I'm arguing is it's not a card that's going to change that process. It's a team collaboration focused on the customer experience that is really going to develop that communication. It's going to create transparency. All those other things, they're marketing ploys. We're marketing to our customer. The reality is the way you deliver value is you deliver it. You create experiences.
So when you come in and I don't give you a preview of what I'm going to do, and you're just going to leave the car not knowing exactly that I'm going to call you with your first, or I'm going to reach out to you with your first status update at 10 a.m. I'm going to reach out to you by noontime with the next step. If I don't give you any of that information, you're not going to be tempted to pick up the phone. You're just going to wait there until
I didn't say we shouldn't give them that information, right? That should be communicated with the advisor and the customer. I'm saying that a card isn't going to change my perception, right? And I would wonder how many of those customers as a percent really actually look at that card and read it through, or if the advisor's doing an amazing job saying, here's what you can expect. Here's what you can expect me to call you back by this time, to give you an update. If I don't have an update, we can text through chat. We can, multiple forms of communication, because to your point, it's not about how they learn, it's how you communicate with them.
Both ways. What I just explained to you, what you just explained to the customer, here's what I just told you, in case you forget, because you come in twice a year and you're not in the car business, so you don't know what we know.
That's the best part about having a debate, is you don't always have to agree.
Love it. This is probably our most debated conversation that I think we've ever had.
Can I throw this out there, guys? So one thing I see, John Fraser is saying that the expectations can vary too greatly from one RO to the next. However, one thing, and I agree, there's such a variety of situations we're dealing with. But one thing is for sure, if you have a blank for the update time on that card, and of course you can make this a very simple status update time card, that's a must. The customer's got to know it, whether you text it to them, the information that I will be contacting you by, let's say you're dropping off at 9 a.m. and I'll say, I will be contacting you by 12 with a status update, no matter what's going on with your vehicle, depending on what kind of system you have. Maybe you have an awesome system that actually updates the customer automatically. That would be ideal in the perfect dealership, right? However, if not, then it's up to management to set it up in a way that advisors do have time for the status update. They check in every couple of hours with each advisor, say, hey, have you done your status updates? And the goal is 0 incoming status calls. So you inform the customer at the drop off. However, talking about the perfect ideal dealership, what would it look like from a customer standpoint? I put out a little question to 900 of my closest friends, or 1,800, I don't know how many I have on Facebook. And I said, what would it look like to you? And this is to lay people. If you're not in the car business, what would a perfect service experience look like when you go to service your car? And guess what? Well, I don't have that many close friends that actually answered, only one. But if I would have asked the question, would you guys share a bad experience you had at a car dealership? I would have had 500 answers. But this one is very relevant because it comes from a lady who said, honesty, that's it. Because we lose trust with the customers when we do things that live in the shady gray area, when the customer doesn't perceive that we are communicating it with transparency, that we're trying to sell them snake oil. So what the service advisor did, he said, at this service, an air filter is called for based on the OEM recommendation, and we do a complete inspection, the MPI, oil change, whatever, tire rotation. And he said, but I'm going to update you if there's anything else. So the update was actually the technician checked the air filter, and it looks like somebody had replaced it. Found out later that the husband had replaced it earlier, and we did not have to replace your filter. So that filter will be checked again at the next service in however many miles. So she said, from now on, until as long as the service department is going to treat me that way with this kind of integrity, honesty, that's where I'm going. Because they did not want to sell me a $60 filter for nothing when it was really not bad. When in some cases, the technician automatically throws that old filter out, puts a new one in because the service calls for it. So transparency, honesty. So why did they go away? 70% go away because they lack trust. So if there's anything in our process that undermines that trust, then they will go away. If there's anything in our process that is not clear communication about time or pricing, well, those are the number one things that will undermine trust. If we say we're going to have something done by a certain time and it's not, then you're losing trust. If we say it's going to cost $135 and it's $160 because you have to pay for shop supplies and taxes, who doesn't know that? But we fail to include it in the quote. We lose trust. It doesn't matter. From a service, I've heard service advisors say that. Oh, I told them 135, but they should have known the taxes go on top of it. And I'm like, no, you should have included in the quote. It's not hard. Whatever your tax rate in your state, like 27% in California. But, you just, I'm just kidding. No, I know I love California actually. But no, you add it all in, whatever it is, 9%, 11%, doesn't matter. Add it on. Give the customer clear communication. And from a customer standpoint, that's the perfect dealership, is the one that doesn't drop the ball. Other than occasionally stuff happens once a year, once every 10th visit, something happens, they will forgive you for it. But they will consider a place the perfect dealership if the communication is there, if the transparency there is there, if you make the effort to let them know what you're doing, then you do exactly what you told them you're doing. And then when they're picking up, you tell them what you did. You set up the expectation. This is what we'll do. Then you do exactly that. And that's what we're all talking about.
But you see,
However,
what
Joe, I
happened-
got to say one last thing, because I know I'm rambling, but on the paper thing, in my family business, we decided many years ago that we were going to hand out a welcome letter to each customer that's in the business for the first time. We have a little trick to how to find out. Sometimes they will say, I'm new to town. So we hand them the welcome letter. We have had customers who jumped around. Literally, this one lady jumped up and down. She says, I've never received the welcome letter that explains our service philosophy. And it starts out that our intention is to provide the best quality service and the most personal care when compared to any industry. And then we go into our process, business hours, and how to do business with us, how to get the best service possible. We partner with our customers in providing them with the best service. And the customers got a part in this, and they will play along. I promise you this, when you outline your process, most customers will go with it, and they'll say, okay, you're telling me that's how you roll? All right, I'll play along. Let's see how that affects me. When they see that benefits them immensely, the customer says, all right, these guys know what they're doing. Like a good doctor, like a good nurse.
You don't need a document for that. You need a process. You need to understand what the customer's expectations are. We're taking a transactional experience and turn it into a connection to a facility, connecting people. Instead of changing it from a transactional, hey, here's how your transaction is going to exist, we now change that to here's what your experience is going to be like by following through on the process. But ultimately, how many dealerships have stopped for a moment and process mapped what they do currently and what the customer's experiences are and match them? How hard is that to do?
But you see,
Where are we today?
the problem
with
the problem is that we, as an industry, chase the numbers first. As to your point, Joe, we're a transactional business, and we need to be a relationship business first. I'm not saying the numbers aren't important, but we're not focused on the relationship first, which builds the trusted advisor and makes a lot of these issues that we're talking about going away. That's why there's no consistency. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Business slows down, everybody's chasing numbers. Everybody's, raising door rates and raising effective labor rate and raising gross profit percentage. And they're forgetting about the customer and the relationship and to use Tully Williams' favorite expression, they forget about the repeat and referral business that they're losing.
I think we're losing sight here that we're on the same plan. The difference is it's no different than when you onboard a new technician and you have stores that have no career path,
right,
and you have stores that have career path. If I'm coming on board and you're telling me, hey, right now you're at this level, we're going to help you achieve these levels of proficiency, and when you get here, you can expect X, and I sign it, and the employee signs it, that shows them that I have a commitment to them, just as I'm asking them a commitment to me. I have to live up to my promise. When I bullet point what I verbally say to them, we for 100 and some odd years have verbally stated to the customer what we're going to do and not done it. When we bullet point what we're going to do for them during their visit, then we're making a commitment to them that we're going to follow up proactively and we're going to honor that. All right. Jamie says, no, Joe said, Pete Press says Joe is 100% correct. Communication is key. Letting them know what you're going to do. If you want to teach somebody something, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, and they'll process that information a lot better. He says, how many times have you tried to actually call an advisor and not get through? It's all too common. We're setting the stage for setting proper expectations so they don't need to call in and have that frustration. And you take Jamie to follow up. Hold on one second. I agree, but when we put it in writing, it creates a level of accountability and commitment to not only the team, but our guests as well.
What is the service manager in the average dealership in our country telling their advisors every day?
But they're not doing it.
Well, they're not doing it because they have them chasing other things.
It's
As
a
I
transactional experience.
previously discussed. They're
communication.
chasing
They're not doing
numbers day in and day out. They don't have time to focus on the customer experience, nor do they want to, because it costs them in the paycheck. Because they have bonuses on numbers, whether it's effective labor rate, whether it's hours per RO, whether it's dollars per RO, whatever it is. They're all driven by numbers, and that's why we're missing the boat for the last 30 years, because most service managers don't focus on the relationship first.
So
And
Mike,
I would say one more thing on that point. If this card is going to create the experience that the customer expects,
Part of.
and you deliver it on, hold on, and you deliver on it, that's more of a service promise. So if you're that committed to it, create a damn board in the background of every advisor's office that has every bullet point you're talking about, because that's what you're promising you're going to deliver on and what the customer can expect. What I'm suggesting is, in the end, that customer experience is so important that telling them what you're going to do isn't as important as showing them what you're going to do.
And in case they forget it on the way home, they can read what you told them you're going to do.
I would be so confident in that process. I would put at the bottom, as the service manager or general manager, say, if your experience at our store is any different, please contact me personally. Here's my cell phone number. To Mike's point, Mike, I think service managers are acting out of fear, and advisors are acting out of fear too. Everybody is scared that if we don't do those numbers, if you don't push another flush, if we don't do another whatever, then we're not gonna hit the numbers. When in fact, the most successful service departments or business of any kind offers complete care at every visit to every customer, 100% of the time, no excuses. But that's like jumping out of the airplane and making sure you trust that parachute's going to open. I'm going to tell you, the parachute of customers rewarding you with everything that you recommend when you're basing everything you're doing on integrity, on transparency, on making sure that you clearly do those good MPIs, not some pencil whip, superficial MPIs. Video MPIs obviously would be ideal, but you become the most trusted advisor for life that, and Mike, you're talking about. So the problem is fear, because they're chasing that number. But if it has to come from really a meeting with the general managers, with the owners, and say, look, guys, we will not sell anything that is basically cheating the customer. But everything we sell should be sold in a profitable way.
But all those things are coming from the dealer principal or the general manager. That is the problem.
It's not.
Well, and my point, I'm not debating Freddie's point, that digital multi-point inspection or Jamie. I'm not saying you shouldn't do a digital multi-point inspection. You shouldn't have that. I'm all in favor of that. What I'm saying is this card that you're talking about, for me, just me, has no value if you're not doing a thorough multi-point inspection. So to Freddie, if he thinks I'm arguing against that, it's the wrong topic. I'm not. I'm 1,000% in
Part of
favor.
it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
They're not connected. They're not connected. I don't see a value. For me anyways, I do see 1,000% value if you're doing a really thorough multi-point inspection. The talented, skilled technician is providing me with recommendations based on his or her skill set, and the advisor, based on their knowledge, is presenting me with options. I'm all in. I'm all in on that. But that's not going to change my course. If that's not done well, then that card you gave me has zero meaning. If I feel that Robert's just selling me something because he's transactionally based and not in it for the long-term trust and relationship, then I might buy from Robert, but I'm not coming back.
It's all part of it. It's no different than going into a service department. You communicate a certain way, and having that advisor communicate to you like he's pantomime. If you don't understand what he's saying, if he doesn't speak your language, it's all part of the written, the verbal, the execution, the follow-up, and the honoring the commitment. I love this. This is truly our most.
It's what makes it fun.
Where we're not fully in sync on it. And here's the beauty of it. There's no one right answer.
Right.
We haven't even scratched the surface, I think, because one of the conversations was that eventually we should look at this from each constituent standpoint. What would be the perfect dealership from a technician standpoint, a parts counter salesperson standpoint, a service manager? What's the service manager expectation out of the dealer, out of their advisors? How to set it up ideally. Dream a little, or dream a lot, actually. But hey, one last thing. No, I don't want to say, but I'll say, we all know DISC, right? Or personality profiles. Yes. So depending on your personality profile, you will perceive some of the things that advisors do differently. And advisors should have some personality profile training. So to not push something on a certain type of customer that customer is not in tune with. Like you said, Paul, the love language of the customer is not reading this thing. Like Joe, clearly you made it clear that's not you. But there are people who need something to read, even if they just sit for 3 minutes on the toilet. Those people will read everything. They'll just eat it up. So they're different, but you're right. So we're definitely in agreement that it's useless if you don't follow, if your experience is not identical to what's on that piece of paper. It has to be amazing. So, hey, what's the perfect dealership? Facility and processes and people all combined, right?
Yeah, it's all of it. It's no one thing. It's all of it. All I'm saying is don't leave anything to chance. It's no different than the kiosks, right? The kiosk will never replace the advisor. However, there's a percentage of the customers that will not come in if you don't offer it. So you have to ask yourself, do I not want that customer or do I want it? So you have it, you offer it. There's nothing. I'm the guy that would rather do 5 extra things than wish I did 1 extra thing and lose that customer. In my opinion. I love this. This was great. Gentlemen, thank you. This was a very engaging conversation. And we can agree to disagree. Overall, we agree on it's all about the customer experience and how we deliver and act on that promise makes and turns those people, as Pete pointed out, into key throwers. We all have had them over our career. We've had many key throwers. This is just different points of view. As with anything, there's no one right answer that covers everything. Listen to what you heard. Take pieces that you think would benefit you in your store and run with it. Most important thing is take action. Knowledge without action is just wasted time. Gentlemen, any final words before we call it a night?
I think you nailed it, right? No one size fits all. Dealers have to make a decision that works best for their customer interactions and their environment and their team. That's the best part.
In the perfect dealership, you build such a reputation that customers, a large percentage of them, already come with great trust because of 1,000 or 2,000 of their closest friends on the internet telling them that you are the place to go see because of the reputation you build. It takes 3-4 years if it's a place that's broken to get that kind of reputation, but that's where you want to go. Be the kind of place that everybody talks about, that the buzzword in the street is that's where you want to go. And people come with their guard down, a responsibility that should not be taken lightly because then you can take advantage of them. However, it's a pretty sweet spot to be.
Mike, close us out, man.
I said what I had to say.
And with that, I thank you. Those that watch it live every week and support the show, thank you. Those that watch it on the replay, I thank you. Have a safe and successful next week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live.